I think that's where we're up to. Verse 22, that's where we're going to start. Verse 22 says, "For I have kept the ways of Hashem. I have not departed wickedly from my God." And this verse, Yigmaleni, one second, verse 22, Shishamarti darche Hashem, I kept the ways of Hashem and I haven't departed wickedly from my God, which is David emphasizing the fact that, he has tried very hard to keep all the laws of the Torah, and he hasn't departed from them. And he is, of course, thanking Hashem for everything, but he is someone who acknowledges he's not fooling himself. In other words, he knows where he's holding. He knows that he has followed Hashem's ways, but he does give credit to Hashem that sort of like Hashem has helped him follow his ways. Now, I did mention last time that he's mentioning these ideas that he's it sounds a little arrogant, and my answer was that he's not fooling himself. He knows the facts. He has kept the ways of Hashem, and we all know that the way of getting God's blessing, at least the normal way, is following Hashem's commandments is a channel for Hashem's blessing. Hashem wants us to keep his ways. One second. Someone, Ed, it looks like you...
Yeah, I'm trying to see myself.
You just shared screen. You have to... this will stop others' screen sharing. Okay.
Can I connect again?
1 second. You sort of messed us up over here.
Sorry.
Let me see if I could. Can you stop your share screen? Let me see.
I don't know what to do. I'm new to this, you know that.
No, you're not muted.
Not nude, new, N-E-W.
Select a window that you want to share.
Let me start again. How about if I start again?
Let me try this now. Oh, something's wrong.
Sorry, I'm messing everything up.
You know what, Ed? We're going to just...
Rabbi, the problem is that he came in as a host and he jumped onto that. I believe that's what happened. He has to close his screen. Ed, do you know how to close the screen?
Okay.
There you go.
I think I just fixed it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. I see you, Rob.
Okay. No problem. Anyway, I'm not familiar with that issue of participant sharing screen. So at least now I think I know what to do. Okay, so again, we're in verse 22, and we're mentioning about David saying to Hashem, or part of his song is that I have kept your ways and I have not departed from Hashem. And I was mentioning that, of course, we know that the channel for blessings is following Hashem's ways, meaning that Hashem tells us these are the mitzvahs to fulfill. And by us fulfilling these mitzvahs, we're actually allowing channels for Hashem's blessing to flow to us. And there's 613 channels, almost like it's almost like having a few businesses. So if one business maybe is not working out so well, you have money coming in from the other businesses. Or if you have real estate, so you have money coming in from all the different real estate locations. Same thing as with mitzvahs, that by fulfilling the mitzvahs, we are making vessels and avenues for Hashem to shower his blessings to us. And that's what David is saying. He's kept the ways of Hashem. He has not departed wickedly from Hashem, and Hashem has reciprocated and rewarded him, and so on. And verse 23 is, for all his judgments are before me, and I do not remove myself from his decrees, which again is the same concept. And ki chol mishpatav lenegdi v'chukaisav loy osur mimena, which is the Hebrew. All his judgments are before me. I do not remove myself from his decrees. Now, there's a very nice insight into this, that what it's saying here is that all his judgments are before me. This is really an inspiration. How does one follow Hashem after tragedy strikes or after challenges strike? Let me mute everyone here. This is of course, David had to deal with this because he had a very hard life, and yet he seemed to continuously follow Hashem's commandments. Normally people get burnt out, and after you lose so many times, you want to sort of fight back, or after so many challenges, it's like you can't win, you give up, or and they didn't have psych wards in the hospitals in those days. So, how did David stay so chemically balanced and so able? How is he able to continue? And what he says here is, for all his judgments are before me. And what that means is that he knew, and this was the secret to his ability, to his resilience. What was the secret? That he always put Hashem's judgments before him, meaning that he knew whatever Hashem does is right. That was a given. Whatever Hashem does is correct. And he believed in the righteousness and justness of God. And once you do that, then that allows you to be resilient and to be able to handle all the challenges that came to David, and which I think is a very powerful message, that we, by putting Hashem's decision in front of our mind, saying that is, whatever Hashem does is just, it makes it easier to handle, because we when you think that you just have bad luck and bad things are happening, and it's a big turnoff. But when you know that Hashem, whatever Hashem is doing is all his ways are just, it allows a person to move forward. Yes, Susan.
One of the things, I think the most powerful sentence is, I do not remove myself from his decrees. Whatever happened to David and whatever happens to me, it's the way it's supposed to be. And God has always, I never could understand why my mother died at such a young age. I knew it was necessary for my growth and for my faith. That was the necessity.
So the commentaries are explaining that on the first part. That verse has two parts. For all his judgments are before me. On that they're saying all God's judgments are just. Whatever God does is just. And because of that, I'm able to handle everything. I do not remove myself from his decrees. I follow all of his commandments. In other words, the decrees are referring to the commandments, and the judgments are referring to the suffering that he handled. So, but the point you're making is exactly on the first part of that verse. Verse 24 is, I have been perfectly innocent with him, and I was vigilant against my sin. And that is referring to the Hebrew, samim loiva shtamra me'avoini. Now, what does it mean from my sin? My sin. I was vigilant against my sin. So the commentaries mention here that every person has their area of sin that the evil inclination shoots at them. That, of course, the certain people are not going to be subjected to a desire for certain sins. It's just out of their it's totally out of their league. Like, for example, it would never enter my mind to enter a McDonald's. I was brought up kosher. I was brought up with high quality food or decent quality taste in food. I don't think that I would ever have a desire of a cheeseburger in the first place, and then for sure McDonald's cheeseburger, and for sure a non-kosher cheeseburger just wouldn't enter. Now, someone else who was brought up with it, maybe they would have a desire for it, or crab or lobster. I would, wouldn't enter my desire. But the evil inclination would possibly shoot at me other desires, but not that. But other people, they were brought up with McDonald's, or, and for them, maybe it wouldn't be so surprising if the evil inclination would try to shoot them a desire from McDonald's, especially it's cheaper and, I don't know, it might like taste or whatever. And especially, so they might have such a evil inclination. So each person has their sin. So David is saying that I was vigilant against my sin. In other words, the sins that were unique to my mission. It's really adding another point here, and that is that sometimes you find that in addition to that idea that each person has their Yetzer Hara, their evil inclination, what it's going to try to get them to, there's one more point that has to be added, and that is that if your mission in life is in a certain field, so the evil inclination is going to try to get you in that area, and that's the area where they're going to try to stop you. And for example, if a person is supposed to be a teacher, so the evil inclination is going to try to convince that person that don't study, don't teach, don't, try not to, don't, even though the person is a very talented teacher, but the evil inclination is going to try to get them, is going to try to hurt them in a way that will, stop them from wanting to pursue that area, that field. And so David was saying here, I was vigilant against my sin, meaning that I tried strong, even though the evil inclination constantly tried to stop me from fulfilling my mission in life. But David was saying I was vigilant against my sin, meaning against the evil inclination trying to stop me in this field. And sometimes that's a way of knowing what you're meant to do, is when you see a lot of opposition coming your way, that that's your challenge, and that's a certain challenge for you. So in addition to having like challenges that the evil inclination, it's easy for the evil inclination to try to convince us to sin, there's also a concept of the evil inclination tries to really get us where it means something, where it's like, this is our mission in life. And so David says, I have been vigilant against my sin. Now, in verse 25, Hashem repaid me in accordance with my righteousness, according to my purity before his eyes, meaning before Hashem's eyes. This refers to, at least according to one of the commentaries here, it refers to the fact that he's saying that my mitzvahs, my deeds, were done before Hashem's eyes, meaning for Hashem and not for my own honor or to show off. I accomplished, I fought many wars. That would be a reason to maybe for him to feel some level of arrogance or be a show off. And David says that I followed Hashem, and all of it was all of my following of Hashem, and it applies to his mitzvahs as well. It was all not for other people to see. It was specifically for Hashem, which would be called lishma, for the right sake. And the next verse, verse 26. Verse 26 is, just one second, Hashem. There is one thing I skipped actually in verse 25. Hashem returned to me kitzid kasi, like my righteousness. He repaid me according to my righteousness. Rashi says that refers to the fact that I did not kill Shaul when I could have, when I just cut a little piece off his garment, that Hashem repaid me for my, what righteousness is he referring to? So that's referring to that righteousness that he could have killed, David could have killed Shaul, and he didn't. Okay, again, we're back to verse 26, and it says, with the devout you deal devoutly, im chased tischasad, with the one who is strong in his wholeheartedness, you act wholeheartedly. And the commentaries mention this refers to the patriarchs, which would mean that maybe the first, which would mean the first 3 words, with the devout, you deal devoutly, that's referring to Avraham, is called the chassid, and chassid tischasad, you act kindly or devoutly, and that's referring to Avraham. And with the one who is strong in his wholeheartedness, that would refer to Isaac. Isaac was called Gevurah. Avraham is known as the midah of chesed, the attribute of chesed, the kind one. Avraham davened, shouldn't be known as, he even gave food to those that he gave food even to those that worship the dust of their feet, and he was his attribute was the attribute of kindness. It says when Abraham was around, the heavenly attribute of kindness couldn't do its job because Abraham was sort of taking over or stepping on its toes. Now, when we talk about Yitzchok is Gevurah. So with the one who is strong in his wholeheartedness, you act wholeheartedly. And this is basically David praising Hashem for being kind and giving reward to the patriarchs. And verse 27 is referring to Jacob. With the pure, you act purely. And that's referring to Jacob, Navar, with bar, someone who's pure, you act purely. And with the corrupt, you act perversely. And the commentaries say this refers to power. Again, connected to the holiday of Passover with the corrupt. And what I think that's answering is the famous question on the story of Pharaoh, that how did God harden? It says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And normally, God gives free will to everyone. We have free will, and otherwise, how could you punish someone if they don't have free will? How could you give reward to someone if they don't have free will? So every person has to have free will. And so how did God harden the heart of Pharaoh? So here it emphasizes the answer to that question. It mentions, and that's the commentaries mention this referring to Pharaoh, with the corrupt, you act perversely. That it's not that God hardened his heart initially, it's that Pharaoh was corrupt in the first place. So with the corrupt, that's sort of like automatic. He got paid back. That was part of his payback, was that his heart was hardened. He acted corruptly in the first place. So that's part of the package, is you sort of get corrupt, you get acted in that with the way you act. That's how you are paid back. And this, of course, emphasizes the idea, both of these sentences emphasize the idea that God reciprocates according to our actions and our deeds. And that's the way It's called Midah Keneged Midah, measure for measure, and we'll see it further as well. Verse 26 said, with the devout you deal devoutly. There is an interpretation here referring to David talking about himself, not about the patriarchs, but with the devout you deal devoutly. David is talking about the fact that Hashem let David, even though David's sin was maybe a bigger sin than Saul's sin, Saul also sinned, but Saul lost the kingdom and David kept the kingdom. Now, how could that be? Why should that be, I should say? Why did King David deserve to have his kingdom, even though his sin could be considered bigger than the sin of Saul? And, we're talking about the sin with Bathsheba, which, even though you could say it wasn't a sin, but it still created a negative image for David, a negative publicity for God ultimately. And it was like a chil Hashem, a desecration of God's name. So the answer is because David acted devoutly, and because of that, Hashem reciprocated, even though his sin might have been worse. But he immediately acknowledged his sin and immediately admitted it, while Saul didn't. So therefore, David is saying, with the devout, you deal devoutly. Yes, Ezra, did you have a question? You want to say something?
I would think